Welcome to the second episode of the Film Room Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Baress. I'm with my co-host, Joby Fawcett. Joby, how you doing today?
Well, Joe, surprisingly, the sun came up. Nobody's lives were ruined over the weekend, but we were able to have some exciting week one football action. And it's going to be interesting to see how you and I discuss some of the things that we saw on the field. You saw a great game between Old Forge and West Scranton. I was at the Scranton Prep and Valley View game, but there were certainly some outstanding individual performances and some really good football games between very competitive teams. And we'll talk about that this hour, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about some great performances. One of the best of the week came from Mid-Valley's Jakob Lesher, and he is the Times-Tribune Athlete of the Week, and he actually joins us right now. Jakob, how we doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Absolutely, yeah. You are our first guest, so you'll always be the Jeopardy answer to who was the first guest on the Film Room Podcast. I don't know. Who knows if that's going to be an honor or not, but here you are. So let's start with your numbers from this week. It's funny. Joby sent me a stat correction. You did not have 155 yards. You actually had 158 yards on the ground. So there were 158 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns on 20 carries, caught 2 passes for 77 yards and a touchdown, and returned 2 interceptions for a touchdown to lead Mid-Valley to a 32-0 win over Pittston Area on Friday. Just to get your thoughts when those stats just pop off the page, pop off of everything. You know, when you hear those numbers, what do you think about, Jakob?
I don't think that I feel like I get all the credit when it's really like a team effort thing. Like I wouldn't be able to run the ball without the O-line pushing their man out of the way. Or I wouldn't be able to like be set up in the play without the coach's play calling, or it's overall like a team thing. And I feel like everyone deserves the credit, not only just me.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Joby.
Jakob, yeah. So listen, I want you to, if you could, kind of tell people, the fans out there, what it was like emotionally for you as a senior taking the field for the first time this season at your home stadium, you know, kind of kicking off your senior year athletically because you're a multi-sport guy. And, you know, what are the feelings? What's going through your mind when you step onto that field for that first game?
It's just, I got goosebumps, I started tearing up because I worked my whole life for just to go out there and play and be healthy and just enjoy the moment. Like that's what a lot of the coaches been saying is just go out there, enjoy the moment and play like you haven't played before. And I felt like I really took that to heart and played with everything I had that day.
Yeah, absolutely, Jakob. And, you know, if I had the numbers that you had, I would throw a party for probably about a week. Keep in mind that I was a basketball player and the most I ever scored in a game was 10 points. So how do you and your team, as you mentioned, it's not just you, it's your team who had a great performance. How do you kind of refocus and get ready for next week's game?
Well, you know, it's always nice to celebrate, enjoy the win, but business still has to be handled. There's a long football season ahead. Like our team motto is really complacency kills. So if you get complacent, it's going to kill you in the end. So you just got to keep working and really redirect your mental. And I feel like the captains do a great job about that one and done and just focus on the next.
So Jakob, listen, it is your senior year, as we mentioned a couple of times here now, but you are constantly bringing up your teammates. I think that's a real good quality in a high school athlete. And tell me about this team. What makes it such a special group at Mid-Valley? You know, you're coming off a season last year where you were able to reach the playoffs. You didn't obviously reach the ultimate goal of winning a championship, but had a great season. So tell me about this group, your friends, your teammates, how this has kind of come together for Mid-Valley.
This group has been real special for me. You know, I grew up with these kids. We've played football basically since we were like 6 years old until now. And everyone's just like, it's a real loving community. Like the Spartan community is one of the best communities I've ever been a part of. And I couldn't see myself playing anywhere else, not even for college. Like I just want to be a Spartan forever, which I feel like I always will be. But the people, the teammates, the coaches, everything is just so welcoming and loving. The community is just one of a kind. And you can really see that as we all play together. We're all one momentum movement. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just being a Spartan is kind of like its own title in a way.
Yeah, Jacob, when we were talking yesterday for the Athlete of the Week interview, I asked you about your leadership and you pointed to others. So to kind of piggyback off what Joby said, obviously you had big stats in game one. Who are some of the guys that stuck out for you in week one that maybe were the unsung heroes from week one?
Brayton Oski, that kid, he has so much going on in his mind. He has to identify everything going on up front. If he has to change a play call, he knows what everyone's doing on one type of play. And the defense, our linebackers and D-line, they just shut everything down. Not allowing more than 70, like under 100 yards of offense is a crazy feat. And I feel like they really were the momentum change in the game, and they really stuck and helped us win the game.
Jakob Lesher is our Times-Tribune Athlete of the Week. He helped lead Mid-Valley to a 32-0 win over Pittston area in week one of the high school football season. Jacob, so you kind of got things going early in the first quarter, 8-yard touchdown run. That was obviously very exciting for you. And then you quickly, in the second quarter, the big interception return for a touchdown. That is such a huge momentum shift. How great a feeling is that? If you remember, and you probably don't, one of the last things that I filmed in my Around the Camps visit was you intercepting a pass and returning it all the way to the end zone, kind of to end the drill. And I could just, while I wasn't at your game, I can envision that. That's such a great wave of emotion for a high school football player. Kind of go through that play with me on that feeling that you had in returning that for a touchdown.
Well, to start the play, it was like a wonky snap. Like, no one really moved at first. I was looking at the quarterback, and then I saw him rolling out. And I look at the guy, and I look at Lepresto, and he's kind of breaking down. And I think it was Michael Wall and Nick Jackson got in his face, and he kind of panicked and threw it. And the ball it had a little bit of rainbow on it. So I just ran under it, scooped it, and then ran for the touchdown.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously now, we talked about, refocusing for next game. You host Berwick next week. Obviously, you'll probably maybe you've already started preparation. It's obviously early in the week. What are you looking forward to with Berwick and what do you know about them?
I know that they are a physical team. They have a lot of players, they bumped down from a 4A school to a 3A. So I still know that they're pretty big in size and they're physical, but we're physical. We're big too. So we're going to bring it just as much as they want to bring it.
Jacob, it's so unique for Mid-Valley. This is the first time this football program will take on Berwick. Now, I realize that we are in a different era of Berwick football, but you just can't get away from the mystique. A 6-time state championship football program, national champion 1 year or 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. Just a great tradition there at Berwick. What does it mean to you as a player at Mid-Valley to be part of the first team that will play against really one of the all-time great programs, not just in the state of Pennsylvania, but in the entire country?
It's an honor because not everybody gets to play like a good program like that. But, we're going to bring it. I feel like we're a good program. We're on the come up. We're building a legacy here like they built theirs. So, I don't know. We're just going to have to bring it and see what happens.
Absolutely. Jacob, a little bit of a fun one for you. You mentioned in the interview yesterday that you played NCAA College 14, and it only hit me until after the interview that was the last football game until college football 25. Are you playing college football 25 now?
I'm not too big on the sports games. Like they kind of bore me. But I love playing sports. I'll go out and play sports any day, but sports games or like really watching sports, they kind of bore me for some reason. I don't know what it is about it. Maybe I just have to be involved in it, but I'm not a big fan of them.
Yeah, do you still game at all?
Oh yeah, no, I game a lot. I'm standing at my setup right now.
Oh, nice. What do you play?
I play a lot of like shooter games like COD,
Yep.
Fortnite, Valorant. I'll play like some fun games like Minecraft, Fall Guys. I don't know. There's a lot of games out there that I play.
Oh yeah, Call of Duty got me through the pandemic playing with my friend on online. So that's a lot of fun. Joby, you got something else?
Yeah, Jacob, I'm curious. too, getting back to the start of now that we're talking about your gaming, what do you listen to? What gets you charged up and fired up for a football game? What are some of your rituals as you get ready for a game?
I don't really have too many rituals. I'm usually calm and just like sinking in the moment. But when I get on the field, I'm different. I feel energetic. I'm just ready to go. But a lot of things I do, just really chill out, get in the zone, mentally prepare, kind of rewatch film again, get to like know who we're going up against, what they're going to do. Maybe scout out the team before, see what the strong and weaknesses are, how they look in pregame.
Jakob, how important is that to you in this day and age? It's a little bit different now with the technology we have available to us. You really have an ability to scout and study film, where when I was growing up in high school, we had to actually go to a film room and put a projector up, and now you can go on Huddle or even any website and watch film on opposing players and teams. So how much preparation do you put in the film room, if you will?
Oh, our coaches prepare. They break everything down for us. They put in a huge amount of time, which allows us to put in our own time as well. So they put us in the best spots possible to succeed, not only physically, but mentally, which I think a big part of sports is mental awareness and what's going on around you, not just like in the game.
Yeah. Joby, I also found out from Jakob that he is a Detroit Lions fan. And,
well, I mean, that's okay.
It's absolutely okay. But the Lions beat your Rams in the playoffs last year.
Yeah. Well, Joe, here's the thing. We all have our favorite NFL teams, and Detroit finally won a playoff game. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I was rooting for Detroit after it beat the Rams in the playoffs, because obviously I want the team that knocked us out of the playoffs to advance and win the Super Bowl. But Jakob, listen, you have Jared Goff as your quarterback, and I don't know if he's got enough to take it the distance for you. He certainly couldn't do it with the Rams. But this is a good young team. And what do you think of Dan Campbell? What an emotional coach he is, huh?
He's amazing. Everyone always hates it. I feel like he's getting too much hate for the risk he took in the game, but you got to take risks in order to win games. So I feel like what he did was right, and I'm always going to trust him because you got to put a lot of trust in the coaches no matter what.
Jakob, the other thing I wanted to mention, too, for our listeners here, you're a multi-sport athlete at Mid-Valley. And when you're at a small school like that, it's really important for you to get out there and compete in multiple sports. And listen, you've had championship performances in track and field, of course, and you've done other things in your other sports. What is it like to be an athlete at Mid-Valley right now? There just seems to be a great energy surrounding all the athletic programs there. I mean, you have that magnificent athletic complex that was completed last year, and the participation rates in all of your sports has increased a lot in the last couple of years. What's it been like for you?
Well, I think, again, like I said, Mid-Valley is building their own legacy right now. I think Mid-Valley is getting accustomed to winning. And once we got a taste of winning, we don't want to let go of it. So everyone at Mid-Valley is supposed to keep winning, no matter what sport it is, what you do. Like even our chess club, they're dogs. They, and they love winning too. Doesn't matter what it is. If you're at Mid-Valley, you just like to win.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's all I got for you. Joby, you got anything else?
Just one last thing for you, Jakob. Now, listen, you have a very important game coming up this week, and I want to wish you the very best for the remainder of the season. Stay healthy. You're a terrific football player. I loved watching you play last year when I got an opportunity to catch you in person, and just keep working hard. And yeah, you are building a little something there for the Mid-Valley football program. It's been a long time since they've had the kind of success you've helped the program have in the last couple of years, and I want to congratulate you for being the Times-Tribune Athlete of the Week this week.
Thank you, Joby. I appreciate it a lot.
Jakob, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for talking to me yesterday, and good luck the rest of the season. All right, so that was Jakob Lesher from Mid-Valley. He's the Times-Tribune Athlete of the Week. That will be in Tuesday's. The interview I did with him yesterday will be in Tuesday's Times-Tribune. You could also read the interview at the times-tribune.com/sports. It'll be up there. So let's move on to the rest of the week. Joby, we had some great games over the weekend. I had the privilege of having a great week one game, Old Forge against West Scranton. big back and forth between the two teams, and came right down to the end. It just an incredible game. The big performer there was Kale Krishnowski of Old Forge. He had 102 yards rushing on 22 carries and 126 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns on 4 catches. He also comes up with a big pass breakup on 4th down in the 4th quarter. Just a massive game for him. You said in your previews, this guy is fast, and I can confirm that he is fast. He was great to watch, Joby.
Yeah. So listen, it was kind of a neat week 1 game. If you caught some of my notebook last week in the Times-Tribune or online, I kind of previewed a little bit that this Old Forge game against West Scranton had a little sidebar in it, but it actually turned out to be a big sidebar in that, Jake Minetti was an all-state football player for Old Forge, and he was the quarterback for that team in 2013 that went to the state final in Class A. And, so it got a little bit of an intense feel to it going into the game, and then it delivered. That's just incredible that these are two teams that don't typically play against each other. I don't think the last time that the two teams matched up was 1986, which is when I was in high school. So that we know that's a long time ago, Joe.
I wasn't born.
Right. So yeah, it was a neat to kind of see that the two teams really played a fine physical football game. You had all the big plays. I was following your reports on Twitter during my game. And as it turns out, of course, I covered the Friday game of the week, which was number 2 Valley View at number 1 Scranton Prep. You actually finished out covering the actual game of the week, which is part of the Lackawanna Football Conference Awards I hand out in the Times-Tribune and online this week. And boy, what a fantastic finish. And yeah, you're right. Kale Krishnowski, he is the District 2 Class 2A 110-meter hurdle champion. He also runs the 100-meter dash. And, he's a big playmaker for Old Forge. He's going to have a big impact on this season in Lackawanna Football Conference Division 3. Clearly, he's one of the top players in the league.
Absolutely. And, West Scranton, really showed some fight. There were some real momentum shifts here. Old Forge comes up with a big 4th down conversion and with about 6 minutes left in the 4th quarter. TJ DiMatteo, he had a great game as well. 14 of 25 for 203 yards, 4 touchdowns. One of those touchdowns came on that 4th down with 6 minutes left. He found Kale Krishnowski, and this will kind of get into, obviously the big stat guys, TJ DiMatteo, Kale Krishnowski, but that touchdown makes the game 27-27. One of the unsung heroes, I think maybe people take extra points for granted sometimes, but Isaiah Rodriguez, 4 for 4 on extra points, gives Old Forge the lead. And it's not just your ordinary extra point. There was added pressure because there was a false start, moves the ball back. He still nails the extra point. And that's was a great part of this game. There were a bunch of, hidden heroes, if you will. Isaiah Rodriguez, also a shout out to Chris Rasmus. West Scranton had a lot of momentum early in the game until Chris Rasmus is able to jump on a fumble, which ends up leading to a touchdown. He has 3 big catches that help get first downs. Another guy whose stats, they don't pop up off the stat sheet. 5 catches, 31 yards, but just big momentum shift plays, the fumble recovery, 3rd down catches. He gets a sack at the end of the half and, ends any chance of West scoring before the half. Just some big plays by a bunch of players. It was just a great game to watch.
Yeah, very exciting finish there for you, Joe. And what I always find interesting now is, as I do a lot of the prep work for the preview section, Game Face right after the conclusion of the games on Friday, I start to, put some things together. And I always find it very intriguing to see how both teams react in a situation like that, where you have a game 28-27 comes down late. I believe Old Forge made a key play defensively to stop a potential touchdown that would have won the game for West Scranton in late in the fourth quarter. So you have the great euphoria of winning over at Old Forge. It's a big game because of as I mentioned earlier, the rivalry there that's now budding between the two programs. And Old Forge then now has to kind of carry that momentum, not get too overwhelmed by it, and get itself refocused, because I believe, the Blue Devils are on the road this week to play Dunmore. So that's a tough sell, but I mean, clearly they'll be ready to go. And you want to see how West Scranton's going to bounce back. That's an emotional loss.
Yep.
In week one. You've practiced all summer. You've gone through the heat acclimatization. You've gone through the first week of two-a-days. You went through a scrimmage with Berwick, which by all accounts, West did, a good job against Berwick. And now you've started the season 0-1. So we're going to have to see how it plays out, and certainly, how both teams respond to what was a really exciting game in week one.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me shout out some West kids as well, because obviously it was a great game. Dayron Groves, just spectacular numbers, 189 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns on 16 carries. He's a playmaker. And, it's just, you could speak to this too better than me, Joby, but sometimes it's great to be on the sidelines to get those raw emotion in these moments. And there's a big moment in the third quarter where West is facing a 4th and 3 in their own territory. They're down 8 points. Caden Berardi comes to the sideline and says, "I'm getting it." And Coach Jake Manetti trusts his quarterback and trusted his defense in case he didn't make it. It was just a big moment. Instead of getting, the 3 yards that he needed, he ends up getting 12 and bowling over some defenders. They go for a touchdown, tie the game. I mean, seriously, there were just so many great plays, so many plays of heart. It was, I hate to use this cliche. It was a shame that anyone had to lose the game, but I mean, it was just a great football game with big time plays.
Yeah, Joe, they do take score for a reason.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Keep that in mind.
Somebody's got to win. And this
Joe,
time it was
they take score for a reason.
It's true. Someone's got to win.
Yeah. So listen, your game was certainly more thrilling than my game that I had on Friday. Scranton Prep, everybody's talking in the preseason. They're always asking me, who's the best team in the area? What team is going to be the top team that we're going to be covering all fall? And, without hesitation, I said, listen, Scranton Prep is going to be the best team. Okay. This program, and I don't want to kind of overemphasize it, but I certainly want to point it out. Since about 2015, Joe, when Coach Nick Donato was the head coach, this program really started to kind of emerge as the premier football program in the Lackawanna Football Conference. Now, they've had some years better than others, and this rivalry that's developed between Scranton Prep and Valley View has been a big part of, the fact that both teams have had championship success at the District 2 level. But coming into this year, and doing a little bit of research, this senior class was undefeated when they were in freshman football. And, I told you in the summer, I thought that they have no less than 4 or 5 of the best players at their position before the season even starts. And, they proved that. Scranton Prep really played well. And right from the get-go, second play of the game, Lewis Paris, quarterback, goes off right tackle through a gaping hole in the Valley View defense, and he scores the first touchdown of the season. And really, the final score was Scranton Prep 33-0. And listen, anybody who was at the game probably would have said it probably could have been a little bit worse than that. That's how dominant Scranton Prep was on both sides of the football. Certainly, the offense gets a lot of credit. Anytime you rack up 320 plus yards rushing, but the defense was equally impressive. I mean, just physical, running to the football, creating turnovers, stuffing Valley View on a couple of key fourth down plays that really put all the momentum in favor of Scranton Prep. But it's going to be interesting now for Scranton Prep moving forward because, as you know, Joe, the Cavaliers have a couple of non-conference games here against out-of-state opponents starting this week.
Yep.
They'll play against Loyola from Maryland. And then later on, I believe the following week, they'll play Canisius out of Buffalo. Of course, I don't know anything about those two teams. I've never covered them or heard anything, but, we'll see where Scranton Prep ranks in terms of what they can do against teams from outside the area. We have to always keep in mind, Joe, when we're discussing Scranton Prep, this program has kids from various school districts, and they are some really good football players. And this is the kind of schedule moving forward that this football program has to undertake if it really wants to continue this ascension, because really up front, physically and talent wise, very impressive in week one.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously, from what you're saying, like, I know it's only week one, but this is a team that wants a state title. They're preparing for a state title, So
I hate using that, Joe, because I always try to have kids, and I know coaches do this as well, especially high school kids. You want to keep things in perspective, and you always want to try to keep things on tiers.
Yeah.
And I know you played for that Holy Cross basketball program that was always eyeing up state championships. But, look, this program has been on the cusp. They've had success on the state playoff level. You saw last year, Scranton Prep advanced with a win over Newman Goretti. So, now the program wants to take the next step, and that next step is competing in or winning a state title. So, I think that's some of the part of the motivation for that group right now.
Absolutely. Some of the bigger stats from that game, as you mentioned, Lewis Paris, he ran for 151 yards, had a touchdown on 13 carries. Will McPartland, 122 yards and 3 touchdowns on 15 carries. That'll be a team that obviously we'll see a lot of this year. So,
Joe, I don't want to interrupt you, but Will McPartland. So I have the unique opportunity to see him play junior football because he played for Lakeland in the junior football. And while you don't follow it as closely as you follow your fantasy football team, occasionally we'll get kind of peppered with some emails about kids playing junior football who are pretty good. And he had been brought to my attention when he was leading Lakeland to some pretty dominant junior football championships. And he's an outstanding lacrosse player as well. I think he's a Division I lacrosse player. In college, he has that kind of ability, but he had a really, really good all-around football game, offensively and defensively, for Scranton Prep against Valley View.
Absolutely. All right, so let's move to the rest of the week. Obviously we already covered Jakob Lesher's great day.
Mm-hmm.
One of the better games this week was Scranton Pocono Mountain West. Scranton's able to pull out a 14-7 victory. Reese Whitman has a game-sealing interception, has the go-ahead touchdown, 89 yards, rushing 1 touchdown on 15 carries. Jelante Weeks had 86 yards rushing and 1 touchdown on 4 carries, and Memphis Shadow 111 yards on 10 carries. And for good measure, 11 yards on 2 catches. This is one of the more exciting games of this week, Joby.
Yeah, Joe, and look, coming into the season, you always kind of wonder about what Scranton is going to have on the field because, for whatever reason, they're optimistic, but the coaching staff always feel like we need things to go our way. We need our guys to come up with some big plays. I mean, every football team needs that. But clearly, Reese Whitman came up with a huge effort in week one.
Yeah.
12 total tackles. He had 2 for loss. He had a quarterback pressure and the interception to seal the deal. And I know that the Scranton staff was kind of circling this game as one that could give them an idea of just what kind of impact the Knights could have on the bigger picture. It's only one game. They know that, but Pocono Mountain West, not an opponent that they're familiar with. And look, Scranton played a really good game by all accounts, and Reese Whitman had a great game, but they got great efforts, as you mentioned, out of a couple of other guys too. So we'll see now what Scranton has. I believe the Knights return home this week. So it'll be really nice to see what they can do in the coming weeks.
Absolutely. Another one of the high profile games from last week as well. Riverside Dunmore, Riverside taking that one 16-3. I think what was interesting about that game, at least reading the story by our colleague Donnie Collins, Riverside, I feel like, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, they, it's all about like offense. They have a quick offense. That's what they're about. They're throwing as many passes as possible. And, this is a game that they won with physicality. Guys like Richie Kostoff, obviously Tavian Branch, setting the tone on the line. This is, I feel like that's a pretty good sign for Riverside to win in a physical manner, kind of showing that they're an all-around team.
Yeah, and that's a scary proposition there with Riverside, because the offensive genius that Harry Armstrong is. He is so creative in his offensive game planning, and his system has produced some of the most prolific quarterbacks in the history of the Lackawanna Football Conference, certainly the most productive. And I just had a feeling coming into this year, the character of this team was going to be a little bit different because of the size Riverside has up front. And it starts with Tavian Branch, of course, a Division I prospect, but also with Richie Kostoff, where, he could play tight end. But it looks like, based on what I read from Donnie Collins and I looked at the stat sheet, he carried the football as well. He's a big physical back.
Yep.
So you put those two things together, and I think, having played Dunmore for the last couple of years and having Dunmore beat them twice last year, including the District 2 championship game, I think Coach Armstrong kind of came to the realization, listen, if I want to beat Dunmore, or if we want to beat Dunmore, we've got to try to do it by ball control, chewing up some clock. And it probably pained him to do it because that's not his reputation as a coach, but it's a credit to him. What did they attempt? 32 rushes they had in the game?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's certainly out of character for Coach Armstrong, but it worked. And Riverside now, with a 16-3 win, 1-0 in the season, already ranked in the state in Class 2A, has a leg up in that District 2 Class 2A playoff race. Remember, Joe, only 4 teams get in, and Riverside's already beaten the defending champ. So I think it's going to be an interesting season to see how Coach Armstrong and this offense continues to play throughout the course of the season. And look, the defense also came through, Joe. That's something that isn't often discussed about when you talk in Riverside football, certainly in the last couple of these seasons, and held Dunmore to 3 points. So that's pretty impressive as well.
Yeah, absolutely. To tell you the stats, Richie Kostoff had 60 yards on 8 carries. That's an impressive amount. So let's move to, I want to touch on this North Pocono Nanticoke area game.
Yep.
Obviously, North Pocono wins 46-7, but that's not what it's about. Nanticoke Area's coach Scott Dennis died earlier in the week, and they had to play a game, 3 days later. I mean, my heart goes out to the community, the family, the players. That's just a terrible situation that no community should have to go through. I apologize, I should have discussed this earlier, but did you know Scott Dennis at all?
I didn't know Scott that well. I don't know even if we've ever kind of crossed paths. But Joe, time you have a heartbreaking tragedy like this, and no one could ever foresee anything like this for high school athletes to have to deal with emotionally. But certainly our hearts go out and our prayers go out to the Dennis family and the Nanticoke football community and the school district in general. And look, regardless of wins and losses this year, which certainly take a back seat, I think everyone's going to be rooting for the kids from Nanticoke and hoping that they can just try to find some solace in going out and playing the kind of football that Coach Dennis would have wanted to see them play. And again, our heartfelt sympathies out to the family and the entire community.
Absolutely. So just to touch on a few other games this week, Lakeland beat Carbondale Area 40-18. Some impressive numbers here from some kids. David Nanowitz completed 9 of 12 passes for 99 yards, 2 touchdowns, added 57 yards and a touchdown on 16 carries, leading the Chiefs. You've got Caden Kuzo adding 96 yards, a touchdown on 16 carries. Chase Rosenkrantz, 6 catches, 59 yards and a score. Calvin Gums Jacobs returned an interception for a touchdown as well. So, nice start for Lakeland.
Yeah, we're going to see after a 1-9 season last year, a lot of the kids that came up and won the championships, an undefeated 7th and 8th grade team, have moved up to the varsity level. I think there's a lot of kind of energy with the program again after what was a very difficult and challenging year last year. So we'll see. Obviously, they had some big playmakers come through for them in week 1. And, it's good to see some of those kids come out and have big games for Lakeland here in week 1 after what they went through last year. And Joe, look at just a couple of things. There's a quick synopsis of the entire week. We have some new teams in the top 10 this week. You mentioned North Pocono with its win, Mid-Valley with its win. Both of them now came into the top 10 this week. We had Delaware Valley went on the road, had a game postponed because of weather, moved all the way to Saturday, late afternoon, early evening. I received a text message from Coach Keith Olsemer after the game, and he raved about the opponent, Lincoln, out of Tallahassee.
Yeah.
And 35-7, Lincoln defeated Delaware Valley in that game down in Florida as part of the KSA events that Delaware Valley takes part in. But again, I want to remind everybody and caution everybody when you see some of these non-conference scores or outcomes with Delaware Valley. Again, it's early. I don't know exactly how good Delaware Valley is going to be, but I do know that program is very well coached and will bounce back as early as this week after that trip. It's always a challenge going down to Florida for them in terms of, just kind of the scheduling, and the game got moved and everything else. So we'll see how Delaware Valley does. Western Wayne, Joe, on Saturday really had a terrific performance against what I thought was a pretty good team out of Susquehanna. We mentioned last week in the film room here about Sean Owens coming back from that injury. Boy, he really looked impressive. This kid 2 years ago when he was a sophomore, I really would have penciled him in for a collegiate prospect for sure. And he looked every bit the part on Saturday afternoon, making big plays. 2 interceptions. He had an 84-yard. What ended up being, it was a little swing pass, but it is a running play because it was behind the quarterback when he received it. He just looked very, very fast on the play. I have a video of it if you catch it on my Facebook page there for Joby Fawcett, the Times-Tribune. So we had a lot of good games. But again, Joe, a little coaching point for everybody. Coaches always say the most improvement for any high school football team is between week 1 and week 2.
Yep.
So we'll see what we have. We'll start to get a better feel for just how these teams are in the big picture coming up here in week 2.
Absolutely. Let's talk about week 2 a little bit. You mentioned Western Wayne. They've got a big game against Lackawanna Trail. That's the game of the week. You'll be there. What can we expect in that game?
Well, what you can expect as a fan is going to be a physical battle. That's for sure. Lackawanna Trail has got some big linemen this year. Okay. And in addition to that, the Lions have some very good speed in the backfield. Demetrius Douglas is the school record holder in the 100-meter dash. Isaac Ryan is an outstanding multi-sport athlete. He was banged up a little bit last year, so you kind of didn't get an idea of what he could do with an overall impact in the game till late in the year when he had a kickoff return for a touchdown against Steelton High Spire. But Lackawanna Trail took a little while to get the wheels in motion. Came away with a 41-7 victory over Tunkhannock in week 1. And talking with Coach Steve Jervis, he was very impressed with how the improvements in the Tunkhannock football program. And he was pleased. He was pleased with his effort of his kids. He was also very happy with the way that the Lions played defensively against a pretty, wide open Tunkhannock attack. Max Kimmel had an interception. And what Lackawanna Trail will face against Western Wayne is a big physical opponent that wants to pound the football with Josh Vinton and wants to play mean, nasty defense. And so it's really going to be, I think, a really good gauge for both programs. Now, Western Wayne is competing in that Class 3A this year, which includes Scranton Prep. It's a big classification. There's 8 teams going to make the playoffs in 3A. So this we'll be able to find out what Western Wayne has in comparison to Lackawanna Trail, which is state ranked in Class 1A. So I'm looking forward to the game. I want to see how the two teams, match up. And everything on paper is just that. It's on paper. So I want to see what happens when the two teams hit the field on Friday. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Another big game. Obviously, I just saw Old Forge. They go to Dunmore. We mentioned it earlier. This will be a really interesting matchup. Obviously, it's a rivalry to begin with. You've got the people we mentioned on Old Forge's side, Kale Krishnowski, TJ DiMatteo. There's some athletes there, but going up against a bruising Dunmore team, what are we seeing in this one, Joby?
Well, Joe, looking at Dunmore, I mean, obviously, all things aside, in a 16-3 loss, you have to remember Dunmore graduated a pretty big senior class last year that helped take that program to the PIAA Class 2A semifinals against Southern Columbia. Okay, so I think Coach Kevin McHale learned a lot about his team in that game, that the group is certainly up to the physical challenges of a season. I believe he's going to start he started 4 sophomores on the offensive line. And, they weren't overwhelmed. They certainly, it was a tight game with Riverside, which we talked about earlier in terms of being one of the better teams in the conference this year. So it's going to be really interesting to see this game because, one, these are 2 very rich tradition football programs. If you saw Game Face in the preseason, I kind of honed in on the Dunmore's clearly the most successful high school football program we have among the teams that are in the Lackawanna Football Conference. And Old Forge is not far behind. Both of them are long time local high schools. There's not jointures here like many of the other schools, Joe. These are, as some Old Forge fans like to often say, one borough, one school, so, and one team. So there's a lot of pride in both of these programs, and they've all won multiple district championships. In fact, Joe, one of the more memorable seasons in the Lackawanna Football Conference was 2013, where Old Forge lost to Dunmore in the regular season and then beat Dunmore in the District 2 championship game and went on to go to the PIAA Class 1A championship game. The year before, Old Forge had beaten Dunmore in the regular season, and Dunmore beat Old Forge in the District 2 final and also went to the state final. So that's the kind of programs that you have here. So it's going to be a good game. Whoever draws that straw is going to be very happy with that game to cover. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Joby, is there anything else you want to cover football wise to wrap up the week and looking ahead?
No, I just think, again, remember, folks, we're just in week 2 and there are a lot of playoff spots open. Nobody's season is over now. Okay.
No.
We still have a lot of football games to play. So, clearly you have to kind of get yourself, you can't get too high and you can't get too low. So let's keep it going and keep practicing. And again, Joe, I think the weather's going to be a factor this week. Even, last week it wasn't necessarily stifling hot.
Yeah.
But you can't, with the 2 weeks leading into the regular season were unseasonably cool.
Right.
And so, we had to deal with a lot of cramping issues, and I think you're going to have to deal with a lot more of it here in week 2 because it's going to be a much different week in terms of weather, temperature-wise. So we'll see. The kids are resilient, and I'm looking for – Joe, I get excited every week right around Thursday after I get all the work done.
Yeah.
I look forward to the games.
Me too. It's weird. It's exciting to step on that football field, even though you're not playing. It's you feel a part of the game, and it's just a great experience.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm happy that the kids are able to get this thing going.
Exactly. Well, Joby, why don't you tell us what's coming up with, we'll have game face out Friday.
Joe,
What's
listen,
coming
my
up?
calendar, you know what my calendar is like. Holy smoke.
We probably don't
Listen,
have this much time.
right, but no, well, the high school tennis season is in full swing right now, and Abington Heights and Scranton Prep are kind of working their way to their annual battle. Those are the two best teams. I don't think any team in the league or any coach in the league will be offended by me saying that. Scranton Prep, undefeated last year, won the state championship in Class 2A. Abington Heights is clearly the number 2 team in that pecking order. So we do a ranking every week, and those are the top 2 teams. We have Valley View in there as well this week. West Scranton is among the top teams this week in Delaware Valley. And then I also ranked the players, Joe, and we have an interesting development this week in the singles rankings. And that is because Lily Lengyel from Scranton Prep, who played number 2 singles all of last season, and Alyssa Wigley, who is our 2 times Times-Tribune Girls Tennis Player of the Year, played at number 1 singles. Well, at Scranton Prep, what they do is, in order to set the lineup, because there is so much talent there, they play these challenge matches to kind of lock in their position in the ladder.
Yeah.
And Lily beat Alyssa. So Lily jumped up and is now playing at number 1 singles, and Alyssa is playing at number 2. And boy, how unfortunate for the number 2 singles players in the Lackawanna League. And you get to play the 2-time Player of the Year
Exactly.
at number 2 singles. But that being said, so those rankings shifted a little bit there in the individual players. And the newcomer to the rankings is Elena Burke from Wallenpaupack. She had a win over Sona Hanyumali from Abington Heights and at number 2 singles. And so she's undefeated. So she jumped in and replaced Sona in the rankings. And so that's what we have for tennis. It's a busy week for tennis, 3 matches this week for teams. And the season really goes by quickly, Joe, because they try to beat the weather in October.
Mm-hmm.
So they're they'll be at mid-season by Friday.
Yeah, that's great.
That's where we're at in the tennis scene. Also this week, volleyball starts. The preview was in the Times-Tribune on Sunday. North Pocono is the heavy favorite to win the Lackawanna League this year, but I think there's a real good balance of teams that can be very competitive and challenge North Pocono for that championship. Those teams include Abington Heights. Blue Ridge is always going to be a factor. I think Dunmore is going to be pretty good. Western Wayne is one of those teams that could really challenge for the top spot. So those are the teams we're going to be looking at. Some individual players. We have some all-region kids back. Mia Suma, Sawyer DeLucy. They're both at North Pocono, and they both played on that team this summer that from NEPA, that travel team that played in the national AAU tournament. So down in Florida, they were coached by Chris Suma. So those are 2 of our real outstanding players. And, they had a media day a couple weeks ago. I enjoyed meeting a lot of the players in the league, and I'm looking forward to getting out and seeing some of these teams in action.
Absolutely. Just to touch on some golf from earlier in the week, Lila Jones out of North Pocono won the Anne-Marie Simons Classic by 7 strokes. She shot it.
Congratulations to her.
Congratulations to her. Also, some numbers that popped out. Robbie Lucas out of Abington Heights had 2 eagles and 2 birdies for a 432 at Glen Oak in a win over Delaware Valley. I've never gotten an eagle, and this kid had 2 in a round.
Robbie Lucas is, first and foremost, he is an outstanding young man. He's been through a lot in his life. I did that feature story on him a couple of years ago.
Yes, I remember.
When he was a sophomore, he lost his dad to cancer, and he's just such an amazing young man in terms of his character and what a talented athlete. He's the bruiser of the boys basketball team. He does all the dirty work, kind of like you did, Joe, but just a little bit more physicality.
Sure.
Robbie.
I wouldn't be able to stand up to him. No.
Yeah, so he's a big physical kid, but and a terrific golfer. It was so funny last year. I had to interview him for something for golf. He had done something, maybe he was at States, and I hadn't put 2 and 2 together, and that he was the same kid who played basketball, because I could never picture him being this great golfer, and he is. He's a terrific athlete and a terrific golfer. So, yeah, hey, listen, the golf season, like tennis, they want to get these matches in before the weather changes, and clearly we've had some outstanding performances. And I just want to mention too, Joe, didn't Scranton Prep's girls team win that Anne-Marie Simons team title at that event?
You are right. Led by Chloe Lynch, shot a 94, took second on a tiebreaker. She led the way for Scranton Prep to win that team title. Absolutely.
Now, Joe, the other thing we wanted to mention here real quick is, I mentioned volleyball starting this week, but all soccer has gotten started over the weekend with some non-league games. I think the league matches start this week. We've also got cross country getting ready to start. Abington Heights girls won an invitational championship over the weekend. Listen, keep your eyes on this Abington Heights girls cross country team. Outstanding depth on that team. And, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but I've already kind of laid the groundwork for what's going to be an outstanding season. I know many of these girls from the track season, okay? Anna Puslowski and Reese Morgan. These are really, really good and dedicated distance runners. So I think Abington, and we have some real good individual talent in cross country getting ready to break out here. So that season's getting started, the regular season, I think this week or early next week, right, Joe?
Yes, absolutely. And I do have one soccer stat here on my little note sheet. Brian Barbosa, 3 goals for West Scranton, a little hat trick and a 4-1 win over Wilkes-Barre area on Friday night. So yeah, we're going to be in full swing here, Joby.
We're going to have plenty to talk about on this podcast, Joe. Maybe this thing will stick. We'll see.
Maybe, right? Hey, we're through episode 2. We had a guest. I mean, we're rolling, man. We're rolling.
And again, congratulations to Jakob Lesher, this week's Times-Tribune Athlete of the Week. Make sure, listen, I have to encourage, pick up the paper. Things are different, but we're doing the work. And certainly if you can, go online to the Times-Tribune.com. And if you're looking for football stats, go to varsity.the570.com. The summaries and statistics are all there for all the football games. We're going digital more, so you got to get into the swing of that and get into that rotation. But we're doing the work, folks. We're going to cover the games. We're going to talk about the athletes. We're going to do our best here. That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. And Joby, let's plug some more stuff. Like I said, Game Face comes out every Friday. What's
Joe, I have a really cool story I'm going to do this week. I don't want to give too much of it away, but I will tell you this. One of the outstanding young football players in the Lackawanna Football Conference is also an extremely talented golfer. And he's doing both sports this fall, and we're going to be chatting and profiling him. And we will have a complete preview of the game of the week, which, as we mentioned, is going to be Lackawanna Trail at Western Wayne. And again, I will have a capsule preview story on each game that is being played in week 2 of the high school football season that involves Lackawanna Football Conference teams. We'll have our grid picks in Game Face as well. So please pick up a copy of the Times-Tribune on Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you mentioned, there's plenty, a ton of content on our website each week, the times-tribune.com/sports. We have game stories right up there a couple hours after the games. Statistics go right to varsity.the570.com. They go right up there that night as well. So follow along. And
Joe, don't forget too, we have to follow us on Twitter. Certainly on game night.
Definitely. Because
we're giving live updates, video updates on Twitter the whole night.
Yep.
Follow us on Instagram, the Times-Tribune Sports. Follow me, Joby Fawcett, the Times-Tribune, on Facebook. I post links to all of our content that appears online digitally, and there's always some added treats on there as well. We're getting the information out to you. Just keep following us.
Absolutely. I think that wraps it up for episode 2, Joby. Thanks so much for joining me. Thanks so much to Jakob Lesher for joining us. Again, he is the Times-Tribune Athlete of the Week. That will be in Tuesday's paper. It will also be online as well. So that's it. That's all I've got. Joby, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Joe.